Welcome to Love and Speak the Truth with me, Sister Brenda, the podcast where all voices are heard with diverse guests from all over the globe. We make space for stories of integrity, justice, freedom, and joy. So come along. We're not afraid to get into the tough stuff, and we're actually not afraid to laugh along the way. So buckle up, open your heart, open your mind, and let's get this party started. We have a triple treat coming your way today. Isn't it about time we had three outstanding men join the conversation and help beef things up a bit? Well, today I'm delighted to welcome Mike Laurent, Eric Brown, and Andy Wells. From their bios, you might have already noticed the diversity of experience they each bring to the table. Having had the privilege of knowing these good men personally, I'm especially excited for you to hear them talk some real talk together. Mike Laurent lives in Colorado with his wife and daughter and makes regular visits to Chicago to visit his college-age daughter. Professionally, he brings a wide range of experience as counselor, teacher, administrator, and even a bit of a dabbler in finance. Eric Brown works as a relationship banker, and he has a real heart for helping older adults navigate today's complicated world of banking so they can protect themselves and not get taken. Andy Wells comes with an eclectic background as well, including years working with our sisters in roles ranging from property manager to justice, peace, and integrity of creation coordinator. He's also a CJ Companion of Jesus. These are good men, ordinary guys with extraordinary stamina and courage when it comes to speaking honestly about life, calling, and relationships and service. Mike, Eric, Andy, welcome. We're glad you're here. All right, we have three men talking today. Great men. I'm so glad to have Mike Laurent, Eric Brown, Annie Wells to come in and share a little bit of their life and work and call in love and speak the truth. So thank you guys for being here. And I just want you to know that we're very, very excited to have men joining in the talk.
Great.
Welcome. So let's get started. I'd like you to tell a little bit about your life and work. We'll start with
Okay.
Mike.
All right. Yeah, my name is Mike Laurent. I've done a lot of different things in my work. Currently, I'm a school counselor working in an elementary school. I live in Colorado. Yeah, happy to be here.
My name's Eric Brown. I am from the south side of Chicago. I've been in sales and finance for over 20 years. In those industries, you get a lot of information, and it was important to share that information, and particularly with a lot of underserved communities or people, well, with prime or subprime backgrounds, because there's a lot of I don't want to call them vultures, but there's a lot of in this industry how you can get taken advantage of. And don't get me wrong, it's an industry that people wanna make money. I was there to make money, but there's a way to make money, and then there's a way to serve and give back. So, I'm a firm believer in information.
Hi, I'm Andy Wells. I grew up my early years on the west side of Chicago in the Austin neighborhood, and family moved out probably around 1970 to Glen Ellen Wheaton, and been here ever since. Went to the local schools, met sisters in the late 70s in a job I had at a local hardware store, and kind of intrigued by them and the people that were at the convent. I've been with the sisters for about 35 years, a companion for 8. I on the JPIC committee, Justice, Peace, Integrity, Creation. I take care of the sisters' property, but the more exciting part of the job is the social justice work, and very enjoyable. And you're giving back and making a difference in people's lives that a lot of them are forgotten about. Been married 41 years, great marriage, great wife, 2 boys, and very glad to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. What do men talk about? I want to know just a little bit about how in this time that we're living in, we have three diverse, great men in my estimation. By way of my own telling of you, I've known Mike since he was about 19 years old. Before him, his sister was at school at Loyola in her undergrad years, and she said, "My little brother's coming. Take care of him." And I met Mike on the first day that he came into the ministry
Right.
office,
That's
and
right.
he was
And now
like,
I'm 52, so that says how long we've known each other.
"Yeah," and you didn't want me to talk to you. You didn't want me to look at you. You were like, "Get away from me." And we've been through a lot in
Yeah,
terms of teaching and walking, accompanying students from the undergrad right straight through until medical school before you
absolutely.
left me and went off to Colorado.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, then Eric, I've known most recently because he took such good care of my sister in terms of helping her with her finances as a relationship banker. I just watched us come into that office and he was always there. "Are you okay? Do you need anything answered?" And I just was so impressed. And it was just not the people that came in with me in the bank. It was whenever I came in, you were working with older people to help them manage things. So I was very impressed with that. Of course, Andy is very special in a sense that he's been taking care of the sisters before I've been around almost, and taking care of not only the business of our properties and such, but also caring for one of those manifestations of our calls is to do justice and do justice work. And he's very steeped in that. So I think you have a lot to contribute to this conversation from my standpoint. I just want to hear a little bit about what men talk about when it comes to serving in this time, in this era. You know, we're living in a very interesting time where personal gain, personal wealth, personal building up of I have and you don't. Tell me a little bit about what men talk about in that.
Well, right now in this era, it's a line drawn. Either you're on this side or you're on that side. It is a very hostile because the rhetoric out here is quite hostile. This is just the manifestation of what was going on in the '80s when we talked about greed. So it's just 2.0. When we talk about milking and we talk about junk bonds and we talk about even Trump was around then, we talk about that greed. What we have seen is the manifestation of that greed. So we traditionally still talk about the things socially. We can find common ground in sports, and we can find common ground in if you're single or not. Our eyes haven't changed, so to speak. But at the same time, you can listen to a conversation and you pull out certain things to know, like, I wonder if they're going in this direction or
Mm,
that direction. I don't want to call it turbulent because isn't the turbulent '60s, but it's hostile. And so you have to be quite selective in how you present your conversation, and you have to listen because not only is it hostile, it can turn violent real quick, based upon our platforms that we use to conversate, which we use a lot of social media. Information is at an all-time low. The manipulation of information, even though information is more accessible, it's at an all-time low. Finding quality information
mm,
that particularly affects the African American community because the African American community needs to be informed. But with the manipulation of information, you have all this conspiracy stuff out here, all this foolishness out here. It's walking a thin line. Just that's all I can say. It's very walking a thin line and finding a conversation, whether it's male or female, to
yeah,
be able to engage.
I get it. I get that. Mhm.
Yeah, Mike, Eric, when you bring up it's where they're getting their information from, I I
Mhm.
can tell you how many times I'll be out for breakfast with 2 or 3 guys and I begin to listen. I try and stay on the middle road and listen to where people are coming from. But how many times I'll say, "Where did you learn that?" Or "Where have you heard that?"
Where did you get
And,
that from?
what is your source on this? I don't wanna come off like I'm Mr. I have all this wisdom, but it's like, what are you repeating? Where is the source? I don't get my information from social media, but it is amazing how much that is the source of news for people. It's just it's unbelievable. I have a diverse group of friends, a lot of people that are politically not where I'm lined up, but I listen and I try and figure out where they're coming from because if we all end up in our own silos, that's not
Worse.
great.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
I agree. Yeah, I think that's where we are a lot in society right now, and that's contributing to a lot of the issues we've got going on is that we are siloed a lot, and this whole idea of a news feed, that we have when we look on our platforms that we get fed news, and literally it's called
Yeah.
news feed, so you think about that. These algorithms are designed to feed you things that it knows you want to read or hear or
Oh,
see.
yeah.
And so, in my conversations with other people, this is one of the topics that comes up and just realizing, we all live in our own little bubbles now. And
Mhm.
you think about like Sister Brenda, your podcast is Love and Truth, right? And truth
Mhm.
is really a relative word right now in our culture. There's not an objective word, and
Yeah.
I think that's where we get ourselves into trouble because these kind of things are dividing people. They're getting us stuck in our own mindsets. And Andy, I love how you're talking about dialoguing with people who are different from you that have different viewpoints because I think the way society is moving, we're moving more into our own clans, so to speak, for lack of a better word. People who think like us, look like us, believe what we believe, and the less that we dialogue with diverse opinions and thoughts, I think the less strong our society, our democracy is, and I think that's a real issue in our culture today.
It is.
I totally agree. I'll interject. I have a son that works downstate in public school, and if all four of us could remember when we were in school as a teenager, the lunchroom was just so loud and boisterous and everybody talking.
Yeah.
And he will talk about often it's silent because specifically when they could have their phones. I'm not sure if they can get their phones at lunch now, but it's just everybody in their own little world. And it's
Yes.
like, that is just I
Yep.
can't get my head wrapped around that from the experience back in the '70s, and it's just it's so hard to believe, and yet it's also sad, and
Mm.
I would have thought as we became more advanced, we'd be more integrated, so this business of being in our own little silos and I know a lot of people that can't talk to certain people in their family because they cannot find common ground or agree to find common ground. That's what
Mhm.
like why aren't people agreeing to try and find common ground?
The
Don't
climate
you?
the climate has changed, from listening to the conversation, we're just traditionalists. We search for information and we learned information traditionally. What does that mean? That means that Eric went to the store to get a newspaper from mom and pops and read the newspaper. The important factor in reading the newspaper is that it doesn't have the distractions that social media can give. I can read the newspaper on my phone, but there's a lot of distractions with pop-ups. And those pop-ups become distracting, then the algorithms will send you down a rabbit hole. Uh, because we have so much access to information, we have people who are using just the information without guidance. What does that mean? Like I can read the Bible from cover to cover, but if I don't have guidance, if I don't have that minister to guide and direct me, I can misinterpret it. Don't get me wrong, I can come to a different conclusion than my minister, but at least I've been given direction to make that decision if I agree or disagree. So we have misinformation, uninformed information, and then that all breeds lack of integrity. And
Mhm.
again, we go back to the climate that we're in. We're in a climate that does not represent integrity. This climate was coming upon us since the '80s.
Mm.
That
Yes.
that
Mm.
climate coming upon us greed, money, We remember the 80s and the fast life, and we saw it all, and these corporations, and they're getting bigger. I never forget Jesse Jackson, who had a big problem with major corporations buying media companies. It killed the mom and pop radio stations. So now there's an agenda to put out information that they believe in. So I'll give you an example of a playlist because my brother-in-law worked in radio. There, you couldn't just come to the studio and bring your record. There's a program director. There's certain songs that have to be played in those particular hours. There was no room to venture in this direction and that direction. Everything, and the master word there is programmed. It's programmed. So information is being limited based upon corporations owning the information networks. Comcast, iHeartRadio, they own and control the information, the flow of information. And without these smaller stations, I'm in Chicago, like a WVON, independently owned, I believe, I'm not sure, you can get different perspectives. We're just generally getting one perspective. So it goes back into programming.
Mhm.
Programming. Then when we micromanage it, macro manage it, you can get into how it affects different groups. And there is very little room for error for African Americans not to have good information. There's very little room for error. Opposed to other groups can have room for error, but there's things in their community that can help them recover.
Mhm.
There's less things in my community that's going to help a young African American who heard kill, steal, rob 10 different times. And he and she going to recover from that? Are they going to recover? Are they going to go down that road?
I hear all the feed that's going in. Mike talked a little bit about we're into news feeds, and I also would add to that sound bites. People
Yes.
think they have all the information when they get this sound bite. I think my community gets sick of me complaining to the TV that I'm tired of the advertising right now with the voting, and this one is slamming that one because they took money from dark money, and don't trust this person because they're associated with that person. Men talk about this kind of stuff together, do you think? Or do you think that men focus we need to find a common ground sometime, and I think people like to talk about sports, or people like to talk about things that are not related to politics or maybe even economics. It sounds like you're all saying that instead of listening to one another, we adhere to our little algorithm of what we believe and keep that going instead
Mhm.
of opening ourselves up.
Yeah. We're using social media. We all use it. So if I pull up something political, that social media platform is going to feed me more and more and more and more and more and more of that. And so that's what's happening. The problem with social media is that it's feeding information to people down whatever they search. Anybody ever been on Google and then go to Facebook and you're like, wow, I'm seeing something I just looked at on Google?
Yes.
Right.
Because, for lack of a better word, they're all in cahoots
Mhm.
together. And so that's what's happening. What's sad about it is that the information that the young people get isn't fully round. It's 90 degrees.
Yeah.
In some cases, like you have that information, and some of that's right, but it's so much more. And then they start searching all over the place. They go from searching about politics to searching about religion to searching, and they only get 90 degrees of information. And sometimes information takes not a long time, but it has to become a little more fully round. I don't get the knowledge that I got just because I read one book. I got the knowledge that I got from the community, from my parents, from Mount Carmel High School. All these played a role in forming a fully round understanding or
Yeah.
a disposition about how I believe in. But it was open enough that I'm not closed for new information. And it's again information, information. What are we putting out here on our radio broadcasts and our music that we are misinforming our young people?
Mm,
And
mm.
it's having a problem with even our adults.
Yeah, Eric, I resonate with that. And I feel like, on top of that, we have people in leadership that are trying to consolidate power, right? And
Yeah.
they take advantage of this, right? And so people, again, over several years here, have become kind of complacent, right? And people aren't engaged civically or politically, but they're looking at their news feeds, right? And so people are smart enough to take advantage of that. And that continues to erode a lot of what we're talking about. But I think, the ways that we do engage and the ways that we have to step outside ourselves and realize, hey, we're being manipulated here. This whole system is set up so other people can make money off of us and what we're looking at on social media or whatever media we're using. Right. And so if people can start stepping outside of that, and getting out of that complacent kind of, well, nothing matters, I don't have any power here, that's when things can start to shift, and you talk about, like Andy, you're talking about social justice, that's kind of a way for us to have an avenue out of where we're at, and also relating to what you said earlier, Andy, just about kids on phones, and that kind of relates to my work as a school counselor, and really what drives a lot of what I do is being able to work with these young people. And I work with young ones, elementary age kids, and just try to help them be well-rounded individuals, and not just look at, and education has changed a lot over the years too. And there's a lot of pressure to produce and have test scores be what they are. And for me, what I try to do is look at my students as human beings, right? As holistic as I can. And how do I help them develop in all areas, not
Mhm.
just cognitively, academically, but personally, socially? How do they talk to people? How do they respond? How do they show respect? And these are kind of basic things, but in our society today, kind of like you were saying, Eric, it's a little bit countercultural at this point, that we have to be intentional about how do we talk to each other with respect? How do we dialogue with somebody who thinks differently than us? How can we engage on that level and not just write people off or not just throw an insult and walk away and just be stuck in our own space? So these are the challenges and I think what feeds me in my work is being able to do that on a very early level, right? And help kids develop some of these skills and this awareness at an early age. And that gives them a chance to have that critical thinking and have some skills so that they can succeed and assert themselves and be productive members of society, of course, but also be really engaged in critically understanding what's going on in the world and do something positive with it.
Now, what if I called you, the three of you, a
I
bunch of flaming liberal woke folks? What if I gave you a label, the three of you, a label, guys out of touch with the reality and surviving in today's culture? What if I gave you a label of people not understanding the modern world? How would you respond in terms of persons that believe in justice and service and faith and values? I've heard integrity. Give me some information on that.
Well, labels to me are very much like sound bites because, yeah, I might be on one side of the aisle, but there are things that I will agree with on the other. And I try and sit there and think how they're viewing me and how they're viewing the world. But being labeled, it's too constraining. It's too constraining.
Labels. The most that you can do is just press on when someone gives you a label. So you just press on. You overcome them. You overcome those labels. You know, who you are, and you have to firmly believe in it. Now, it's not always that easy because labels are very defeating. But you just press on. That's all you can do. Press on.
Yep.
Mm.
I totally agree with that. You can't get stuck on that, because if you start reacting to that, now you're in an argument and that's not going to be productive. You don't have to defend yourself. You know who you are. You stay grounded in who you are. But I also think, there is something to be taken from that too. If someone calls me something like that, it helps me understand where they're coming from. The way that I try to approach things is really with a perspective of curiosity and courage. Like, those are two words that really stand out to me in my daily experience and my daily reflections that, in all my work, Sister Brenda, you know this about me too. I worked in ministry with you for a number of years and in education and in counseling. And one of the themes for me is this question, what's it like to be you? And when you come from that sense of curiosity, rather than putting a label or putting someone in a box or making an assumption about people. And when someone's doing that to me, like Eric, just like you said, I just try to put that aside. And then I just get more curious about them, right? And get them talking and then let them know who I am. Whatever label they want to put on me, I guess they can do that. I have no control over that, right? But I think just staying committed to my own integrity as a person and speak the truth that I know. We talked about listening too, right? How important that is. And we have to have the humility to be able to listen to what someone else is saying too, because if we don't agree with somebody, and I'm guilty of this sometimes too, that I start making assumptions, even I was just walking past a parked car the other day that, it's a Tesla, the monster truck thing. Yeah. And I just noticed that I got an assumption about the person that owns that car. But then I saw a bumper sticker on it that challenged that assumption. And it just made me think, not everything is what it looks like on the surface. And I'm a victim of making judgments about people prematurely. They're not even there. It's just a car that's parked there. You know what I mean? And so I think we have to have that humility to look at ourselves and to listen to each other, because we're not going to get anywhere unless we can do those things too.
And if you hear the same label or you're being pushed into a category and you're like, wait a minute, that's not who I really am, then maybe you have to look at, well, how am I coming off? How come I'm hearing this from more than one person? And maybe you have to change a little how you behave. I mean, you brought up the label woke, and you can wear that with a badge of honor that, like, I'm enlightened and I'm trying to step out of, where we've been stuck for 100 years, or it's also used derogatorily. So it's half the labels, you just have to throw them aside.
All that makes a lot of sense. The thing that was on my mind when I threw all that out at you uh, is the word that we use in a lot in religious circles, and that's discernment. And all of you reflected that in terms of your saying to listen and to overcome and to wait a minute and to have courage and to have curiosity, because we have to do all those things at the same time in order not to judge and perceive people in ways that are binding and that are not freeing, to offer your own integrity of being who you are. You know who you are. So nobody else can define that. But the discernment has to come with a whole lot of listening and weighing. I love what was the bumper sticker, Mike? What did the bumper sticker say?
I don't even remember it. I wish I
Yeah.
remembered what it was, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is I'm making assumptions about people, and that's a good check on my own thinking, thought process, and my own way of being in the world.
I just want to go back on something because you all were talking about something that I noticed because I interact a lot, and there is no human interaction when you say people are all down on their phones. Take the train to the airport, especially during what we call rush hour. There used to be chatter on the trains. There used to be energy. There used to be newspapers open and read, and you may look over and see an article that you can engage somebody with, even though they were sitting next to you. You can't engage people right now without it being hostile. I'll give you an example. I heard this comedian say, people used to pop up over your house and knock on the door and it's, oh, welcome. Hey, how you doing? Pop up at any particular time, unannounced. Now, if someone knocks on your door, you're like, who is that? Who at my door right now? You worry at a time when it used to be like, oh, we were in the area. We just stopped by to say hello. How are you all doing? Now you almost frightened. Like, who is that at the door? What the heck? I didn't expect anybody. The human interaction, trust for humanity is low. Trust.
Do you have people in your lives that will say, I talked to somebody, or They're not going to say I communicated. And you realize they have a relationship with somebody maybe for years, but they don't talk to them. It's only
Right.
texting.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
And it's like, wait a minute. It's good, but it's like, why are we losing our ability to talk amongst ourselves and to people that are
Yeah.
close in our lives?
We've allowed technology to imprison us, and what's happening, imprisonment. This system right now that we have in place, it has made us have very little human interaction. We're in our own cell, so when we have happy birthdays in the family, I don't just text, especially to my brothers and mothers and fathers, I call them. But yes, it's people who just text. My daughter should not just text me happy birthday. Pick up the phone and call me.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm guilty of that, guilty of just texting. Will you share a little bit about your perspectives on the fact that we have the three of you are guys, you're men, you have a particular perspective in my understanding because I mostly deal with women in my line of work now, and especially diminishment. I was walking the halls with Andy this morning, and we were commenting to each other about the difficulty in facing diminishment because we're facing it all the time. And we all do. We just are not in certain age groups that have to think about it as much. How do men sort of approach that time in life when you have to think differently about where you're going?
Well, it's been something on my mind lately. I'll be 64 this spring. Feel good. Had my knee done last year's. I should have done it years earlier. But my mother is 92, a lot of issues. My father in law in Milwaukee, I am back and forth from there. And the term golden years, many of us have parents in our lives even when we're 70. And so a lot of stuff has been swirling around in my head, is regarding that and aging. And it's just something we have to get a grip on. And this idea that there's going to be this time of luxurious retirement and nothing to do, that's really one, it's probably not that healthy for you, but it's kind of a fallacy, because if you're involved with people, there's a lot of things that you have to do. In my own perspective, what's a life well lived? And it will be having left this planet in my relationships and in what I'm doing, at least with an effort of leaving it better off, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. And you're
Yeah.
talking, Mike, about, working with young people. I, for years, was a youth counselor at church and all sorts of retreats, and kids will still be in touch with me. But it's all about planting seeds, because it's the seed that's going to grow and hopefully be fruitful and leave a good mark, because we'll all be forgotten. And you've got to come to grips with that your great grandkids won't be able to talk 15 minutes straight about you.
Mm.
You're going to you will be forgotten.
Mm.
And but that's okay.
Yeah,
So it's all
yeah.
about what you're doing and planting seeds.
Yep.
Mm.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I hear that too. And I'm married and have a couple of daughters. I'm here in Chicago visiting my daughter who's in college, but my wife and younger daughter are in Colorado where I live, and my younger one's 10. So I think about these things a lot, and the things we pass on to each other, pass down really to the next generation, is on my mind a lot. And in fact, last night at dinner with my daughter's 23, we were talking about this idea of a legacy, or what you leave behind, because my dad was 90 years old and just died last year. And we were just kind of reflecting on his life. And we were going out to see a play. Actually, we saw Hamilton last night. And a big theme of that play is also, what do you leave behind? What's your legacy going to be?
Mhm.
For a lot of Americans, myself included, I didn't know anything about Hamilton other than, spoiler alert, he was killed in a duel, that ended his life. That's all I knew really about him. But this play comes out, which is brilliant, and it has so many layers of meaning to it. It really tells a bigger picture of who this person was and where he came from and how he got where he was and all the contributions he gave to help found, this country. But that was a theme we were talking about last night. And I was telling her, someday I'm going to be gone. And I hope that, I leave you something. She reflects a lot on her growth as a person and being a young adult now and trying to make her way and figure out her path and just helping her understand. And she was sad because we were talking about my dad and she got a little teary eyed about that. And he said, I'm a product of what my parents raised me to be, and now I'm passing that on to you, and this keeps going on. And so, yeah, I think it's a real opportunity. And like you're saying, yeah, maybe in a couple generations, no one knows who you are, and maybe that's not what it's about, right? But the seeds that are being planted that you can walk away from and let someone else take on the next part of that journey and let that go. I think it's really difficult to do as a person to let go of your control of whatever it is that is your thing. And obviously life has a way of doing that cycle of death and rebirth, right? That's just a natural part of things that we often resist as humans. Those are some of the things that I think about and help me find meaning in my life.
So you use the term legacy. I have, this is kind of funny, and to me it's kind of truthful. On the end of my name is I'm a third, so it's my whole, Chester Andrew Wells the third. When I first started with the sisters, one of the older sisters heard that, and she's like, male insecurity. And I was like, what? And, naming and numbering and all this business. Of course, my son's the fourth. But I think that's a real male thing, this idea of legacy and living on through your children, your sons, your daughters. But my dealing with young people in youth groups and you at school and all the sisters in their teaching years, it's about planting seeds. It doesn't have to be through your own flesh and blood, because many of us, and as time goes on, have fewer kids. It's how I'm going to live on. I don't hear that out of my wife. I've never heard that out of my mom or aunts. It's really something to do with the male psyche.
I can agree to a certain extent. Um, I'll go to one part of what you said is that it doesn't necessarily, your legacy isn't necessarily what you just left for your children. It could be what you left for society. It can be what you left for individuals. I think that's the greater good of legacy. But fulfillment and legacy kind of play a important part. Fulfillment is how fulfilled of a life did you feel you had? And I'll give you an example. I still have my mother and father, and my father had to go to a rehabilitation center. I was visiting him loosely while he was away from home, but he would call me and was like, "Hey, you coming to visit me this weekend?" So I laid in the bed. It got late, and things happen around 11 to 12 o'clock when you start thinking. And I told myself I need to go really see him, and it was an urgency to see him because what I began to think about is not only him, but my own mortality came into play. I'm next up, you know. So,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so, it got bigger than legacy. It got fulfillment. You
Mhm.
know, I need to do things out here in this world that is fulfilling to me. Live my life to the fullest. And that's what came about when you start getting to that next stage of life.
Mhm.
Of course, you want to be comfortable, but you want to be fulfilled. And what can I do to make sure I'm fulfilled? Service to me is fulfilling. Information sharing is fulfilling. But at the same time, travel and there's a lot of other things that I need to do and I want to do. And understanding that I'm next up.
Yep.
We're just going to wind down here, and I'll ask the question that I ask all the guests that appear on this show, and that is, what's love got to do with it? everything we've just talked about, all the bits and pieces that we've thrown in to this salad of understanding, what's love got to do with it?
If we're talking about strictly what I enjoy and the fulfillment and sharing and caring, that is the whole kit and caboodle of love. I love that. That is comfortable for me, and hopefully it's comfortable for others. I don't wanna make it selfish because service doesn't have to be self-righteous. It just brings a warm place in my heart to see someone to be able to get the information, to get to a place that helps them. There was this CD of, Marvin Gaye, Trouble Man CD, and I listened to it. It's like a jazz blues CD, and I really loved it. And I loved it so much that I wanted to share it with my brother because I thought he would love it. And so I shared a piece of myself, my joy, and I gave him the CD. Of course, he loved it. But that's what it comes from. That's fulfilling to me. Sharing some of yourself with other people in a good fashion. It just brings a whole community of fulfillment and love to me.
Amen. Good to you. Thanks, Eric.
I would say love is the glue that holds everything together. And I've been blessed in my life. I have a great wife, 41 years. We've known each other probably 44 years. And yeah, it's in our children. We've been blessed. We do love each other deeply, and you try and share that. And you feel sad when you see people that have very little in their life.
Hmm.
And there are people that don't have
Yes.
a lot of love in their life, and
Hmm.
they're alone, and for whatever reason. So you have to appreciate what you have and recognize in your life the love that you're receiving from others.
Yeah.
I would resonate both Eric and Andy, what you said. I think love's got everything to do with it. I feel like
Mhm.
it always boils down to that in the bottom line.
Mhm.
And what I keep
Mhm.
coming back to is, in my personal and professional life is just relationships are at the heart of it all. And I think a lot of what we talked about today talked about some of the challenges to that, right? Some of the things, some of the barriers that we have in modern life that impede some of that community aspect, some of that just personal connection that we have with each other. And I think we can't overlook that. We can't emphasize that enough. That is really at the heart of things. And, I feel really blessed and grateful to have the family that I have and the experience of and the privileges I've had in my life. But really, when it comes down to it, at the heart of it is kind of coming back to that question, what's it like to be you? And who am I? And how do we understand each other in this crazy mixed up world that we're in? And how do we create community? How do we create a dialogue? How do we move forward together?
All about connection.
Yep.
Yes.
All about connection. All right. Well, a talk with three men, three good men. Thank you so much for being here today. And I look forward to more conversation. And we hope that these conversations that we've had today will allow other people to spark their own connections with each other and with the world. Thank you, guys. And now for the wrap up. You have just had a human experience from a spiritual being. We have so much to learn. So go forth to love and speak the truth. Ad majorem Dei gloriam. A couple of announcements. Don't forget to rate and follow us on Apple Podcast or Spotify. We are on Facebook at Love Speak Truth, and visit our website at www.lovespeaktruth.org. For a few credits, when all is said and done, I give thanks and credit for sponsors, producers, and contributors who made this podcast possible. Mega shout out to IBVM Region Leadership, Megan Butel, Jennifer Schmitz, Laurent Wright for the keyboard music, the late Sister Maria Beer IBVM for her composition of the music Women Bearing Witness. It takes a village, folks. Thanks for listening to Love, Speak Truth.